So the Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese rivalry was a bit of a weird one. Like, and by a bit of a weird one, I mean it was like it's a rivalry that never should have been. Yeah, like one player is a lot better than the other. They don't play the same positions. And like we're looking at a situation where it's like, again, one's better than the other. They don't play the same positions, and the rivalry was based on somebody doing the "you can't see me" to the other person. Like, it was based on nothing to do with basketball, and it was based on a game where a realistically one-man team lost to a fantastic LSU team. And in fairness, like, Angel Reese was a fantastic college player. Like, let's not get it twisted. Angel Reese was a brilliant college player. Caitlin Clark is arguably the greatest women's college player ever. But, yeah, so let's take a listen to this from The Ringer, saying Caitlin Clark doesn't have a true rival in the W. It's a disservice to Angel Reese and Paige Bueckers. And I'm going to react to this. I haven't heard this. I'll play at 1.5 times speed. But I think while the rivalry has definitely helped, it also will harm them because, like, you're seeing it with Paige now, where it's like Paige fans did not shut up being anti-Caitlin Clark, and now it's like, well, Paige is a 23-year-old playing an 18-year-old. She's got to be the best. It is an extra type of pressure on these players.
I think you're going to hate this one as well, given your LSU ties. Wow. Caitlin doesn't have a bird or a magic.
No. No, Caitlin is the Jordan.
I think she's going to spend her entire career, probably up until the point that Juju ends up in the W, but there's still going to be such an age gap with that, with so many.
There's not really an age gap of Caitlin and Juju. There's like 3 years. That's not really much of an age gap. Like, that's the same age gap as, like, am I right in saying 3 years is the same as Giannis and Tatum? And we would consider them similar age? To be fair, we did for a while. Tatum's still, like, the best 19-year-old ever.
Many people trying to pretend that she has a genuine foil, and that conversation is always going to be like in disservice to that player. It is such a disservice to Angel Reese that every conversation around her is in comparison to Caitlin Clark, because
I agree with that point, because I think Angel Reese is a really good player in her own right, but like, she's not Caitlin Clark. Like, I think Angel Reese, I don't think it was a ridiculous thing that she was an all-star, but I think she was a borderline all-star. As in, I think Ezzy Magbegor was better than Angel Reese. But I also think Angel Reese is better than Bree Jones. So I think she was, like, of a roster of 12 players, she was probably the 11th or 12th pick for that All-Star game. And I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with that. Like, I had no issue with her being an All-Star. She was really good in the game. But, like, that's kind of the level that she was kind of at. Like, Angel Reese is around between 30 and 20 in the W. Also, players like Alana Smith, I think, are better than Angel Reese. Leonie Febich are better, that weren't All-Stars. I would put her between 30 and somewhere between 30 and 20, depending on how she's playing, based on last season. Whereas Caitlin Clark is, if you have her lower than 5, you are crazy. Like, there's that big of a gap. It's like comparing, I'm just trying to think who's the 30th best NBA player. NBA 100. I want to see who their top 100 players were. Just, why does it only go from 100 to 51? Oh, either way, it doesn't really matter. Where it's like a 30th player, it's like comparing Julius Randle to Jokic. Julius Randle's a great player in his own right, but like, he's not Jokic.
Because now you have this elite rebounder, this elite defensive player. Chicago's guy were incredible defensively every time she was on the court.
When Angel Reese wants to be, she's an elite defender. And I watched every single Chicago Sky game. Angel Reese picked and chose when she wanted to play defense. She came into the WNBA playing defense every single possession. During the streak and during the second half of the season. Basically, once double-doubles meant more than winning to Angel Reese, which probably happened around the time she was breaking the record, because I will say the first 7 or 8 games of the streak, she still played defense. But around the time she was breaking the record, she stopped playing defense. And that is a fact.
Who has a ton of potential in her own right and is if it wasn't, if she wasn't going up against this generational rookie that is changing everything, would have been rookie of the year, and would have been part like the big conversation that we're having. But because everything is through the lens of Caitlyn, we focus a lot more on her flaws. And there's a lot of other reasons we focus a lot more on her flaws as well. So it happened with Angel. I think Paige is going to come into the league, and it's going to happen to her.
The difference is Paige doesn't really have that many flaws. The whole thing is like, it's not going to be as polarizing as Angel Reese, because Angel Reese is so good at what she does well and so bad at what she doesn't do well that like you're not going to see low light compilations of you're not going to see Paige shooting sidestep 10-foot air balls on a game-to-game basis. You're not going to see Paige missing open point-blank layups on a game-to-game basis. But what you might see with Paige is it's not unrealistic to say Paige will average 12, 4, and 4. Like, not bad numbers. I don't think she will. I think she'll be better than that. But if she averages 12, 4, and 4, it wouldn't be that much of a surprise. And like, I think the Paige argument could just be boring at this stage. Like, it could genuinely just be a situation where it's like, Paige isn't that good. Like, you're not going to see any, because Paige doesn't do anything as bad as Angel Reese misses layups. So it's not going to be as polarizing a comparison. It might just be Jesus, we overrated Paige. You really are overrating Paige. That's kind of the worst Paige is going to be, because Paige doesn't really have any flaws in her game. Like, she's actually, like, worst case scenario, she's going to be decent at everything, because she's pretty damn good at everything.
Paige is going to come into the league and she's going to be incredible. I think she's going to be like MJ. She's going to be Clyde to Caitlin's MJ, where, Clyde Drexler has an incredible career, wins titles, is a winner, but is always going to be in that conversation up against MJ, and that's going to do a disservice to Paige's legacy. And we're going to go on and on like this because, we have this thing in sports where we think we need foils, and we don't always. I don't think we actually all need foils. The great players didn't need a foil. Tiger needed a foil. Tiger never had a foil. MJ never had a foil either.
So this will be the last time I come on the podcast because you're taunting me, and you're aware that you're doing
personally attack you. Yes.
You're taunting. Okay, so let me say a couple of things, and let me try to say these things without disparaging the great Caitlin Clark, because great is not an adjective that is even fitting to Caitlin Clark. She's a spectacular player, once in a generational talent. Okay, first of all, she's never won anything. Okay.
What do you mean never won anything? She went to Iowa. It's like blaming Larry Bird for going to Indiana State. Like, okay, she went to her local college, and you can say, oh, she could have gone somewhere else. She could have transferred. Cool, she could have. She didn't. Angel would have won nothing if she stayed at Maryland either. That doesn't mean if Angel stayed at Maryland, she's a worse player than she won at LSU. They've gone to the W. It makes no difference what happens in college. And I mean that. It makes absolutely no difference. Like, if Angel Reese had stayed at Maryland, got drafted 7th, and did exactly what she did in the WNBA, it would have made zero difference to her as a WNBA player that she transferred to LSU. Caitlin Clark could have transferred to literally, there's a lot of colleges Caitlin Clark could have transferred to, and they would have won. Heck, she goes to Ohio State, they win. Or let's just say hypothetically, she wouldn't have. But let's say Cameron Brink just says, you know what, screw this, I'm transferring, I'm going to Iowa. They win. Does that make Caitlin Clark a worse player? Does it make Caitlin Clark a worse player that she has a 6'1" small forward playing center and they couldn't deal with Camila Cardoso? No! Like, that's the dumbest argument ever, especially when it comes to college. It was Frank Kaminsky better than Karl Anthony Towns because he beat him in March Madness? No! Like, what are we doing? Who gives a flying fuck if they win in college? And, by the way, if 10 years into their WNBA careers, Angel Reese has 2 to 3 rings, and Caitlin Clark still has not won a ring, then we can have that conversation. Nobody cares who won in college. Nobody cares who won in high school. Steph Curry won nothing at any level till the NBA. And Carmelo Anthony won at every level until the NBA. Which one of those two is a winner?
So her main foil right now is the mirror.
Yeah.
So that's the,
I like that though. That should be the foil. That should be the conversation.
That's her main foil right now, is the mirror.
And that's like, okay, if you want to say she has to win before you say anything, where it's like, you don't judge young players by winning. If 5 to 6 years from now she hasn't won, then okay. If she does not have a ring by 2028, then the can she win conversations can start. But until then, you cannot judge a young player who got drafted by the Indiana Fever on winning.
Okay. I'd also argue something else. I'd argue that Bird and Magic weren't foils because of the excellence that they exuded on the basketball court. That was only a part of it. Okay. They were cultural foils more than they were anything else. See, at the time that people are choosing to root for, people root for excellence all the time, but they also root for resemblance. The question is, are there two athletes that are good enough that you have to pay attention to, which I would agree Angel Reese is, right? Good enough that you have to pay attention.
No, she's not good enough. And I mean that with the Rookie of the Year race being a thing, she is not good. Like, look, if Angel Reese makes a big step up next year, cool. She's not good enough. If you intentionally want to make a black v white argument, it's AJ Wilson versus Caitlin Clark. Or you know what? Maybe Fee Collier versus Caitlin Clark. Or AJ Wilson versus Breanna Steward. If you intentionally want to make it a race thing, Angel Reese is not good enough to be in that conversation because you cannot win an argument arguing the 30th best player in the world is better than the 5th best player in the world. You cannot do that. And by the way, let's say the 20th best player in the world. Let's be as low as possible on Caitlin Clark and as high as possible on Angel Reese. The 20th best player in the world is better than the 5th best player in the world. Yeah, no. You don't make that argument. Like, yeah, there was Bird versus Magic and there was people made it something that it wasn't. I'm sorry, the argument wasn't Dennis Rodman versus Larry Bird because there is not one sane person in the world that would take even the best version of Dennis Rodman over any version of Larry Bird in his career outside of like back injury Larry Bird.
Attention to them and are representative of specific things that people can identify with. And that is what happened to me with Bird and Magic. Obviously, I'm not saying anything new. Bird represented oh my God, it's almost scripted. I don't think it's even real, right? Bird, Fresh Lake, Indiana, big, slow, insanely talented, devastatingly competitive white guy, right? Who literally wins, like he wins with whiteness. I'm just big, slow, and competitive, but I can shoot it. I can pass it. I'm tough as nails, all of that. And Magic, wearing a fur coat before the game, LA Showtime.
What? Like, this guy has just attributed physical characteristics to race and then saying, oh, LA, Showtime, all this stuff. Like, you've described how Caitlin Clark plays basketball. Caitlin Clark is the closest thing the WNBA has ever seen to Magic Johnson basketball-wise. You do realize that, don't you? If you're wanting to equate a play style and a way of playing to race and then trying to equate that to Caitlin Clark is closer to Magic Johnson than she is to... Caitlin Clark is literally Magic Johnson. If you combine Magic Johnson and Steph Curry, she is UCLA Lonzo Ball. She's what, like, the highest possible Lonzo Ball were on Lonzo Ball coming in. I'm not even hearing the rest of this argument. This is just dumb. Either way, though. Look, yeah. I think there's too much pressure put on these two players. The problem with Angel Reese is that she could be really good. And I think she's going to be really good. She's not going to be really good in the way that people think. Like, for her to be a, like, 18 point per game scorer, people don't realize. People are like, oh, if she gets more efficient, she's going to score 18 points a game. And it's like, it doesn't work like that. She's not going to be force-fed the ball anymore. She's going to be taking less shots. Like, the reality is that you want, for Angel Reese, the 13 and 13 number she's giving you right now, if she can average that for the rest of her career, but do it on better efficiency while focusing more on the defensive end, that is going to help her teams win a lot more games than Angel Reese trying to become some inefficient poor man's AJ Wilson. Because she doesn't block shots well enough to be AJ Wilson. She doesn't have the feel for the game that AJ Wilson does in the offensive end. She's never going to shoot like AJ Wilson because her hands clap off against you. Like, the shot's broken. And that's where the problem is like, for me, it's like Angel Reese should look to improve. What Angel Reese should look to be is the greatest role player in the history of the WNBA. And the greatest third option in the history of the WNBA. Because that's how she's going to win rings. Angel Reese will never win a ring as a number one option. She is so far off it on offense. Like, but she could be the most with her rebounding, with her ability to play defense when she wants to, and even if her becoming an average offensive player and an average finisher is unbelievable. Would be unbelievable if she can even hit a mid-range shot. That would be unbelievable at any stage in her career. But Angel Reese could potentially be. And the problem is that this whole Caitlin Clark comparison, all this like cultural stuff, means that people are trying to force Angel Reese to become something that she's just not going to be. Like, Angel Reese, if you try to force Angel Reese to be a number one option even within the next 4 or 5 years, she's just not going to be that. She's not. And that's fine. Because she's unbelievable at what she does. And she will win a lot. Like, Angel Reese could be the most sought after, in 2 years' time, the most sought after third option in the WNBA. She's a player that, because of her rebounding, if she can hit the mid-range shot, can fit in beside anyone in any play style and is just going to disrupt and cause chaos. The problem is that if she's getting the ball, the more she gets the ball, the less good stuff she does, because her decision-making is not very good with the ball in her hands. She's a bad finisher. Her touch isn't very good. She's mechanically bad at a lot of stuff. She can't dribble. Her court vision is not very good. She can't really elevate and finish over people. She's a great rebounder, but she can't really elevate. So, yeah, I really do hope to see Angel Reese. I think Tyler Marsh will help her, but Angel Reese is not going to be Caitlin Clark. And that's a dumb comparison. And also, Paige Bueckers might be better, but I think Paige Bueckers is going to be another player. I think she's going to be another player. As in, I think she's going to be an all WNBA player. I think she's going to have a couple of years where she's an MVP candidate. I think she's going to be an All-Stars or rookie. But, like, she's not going to be she's not going to be the generationally good rookie that Caitlin Clark was. That's just my opinion on this.